Module 3, Lesson 4, the opposite of a number. I can demonstrate and explain that each non-zero integer, remember integers are whole numbers, has an opposite that would be written or denoted as negative a. So I have an integer that we will call a, and its opposite is negative a. I can demonstrate and explain that negative a and a are opposites. So if I have two integers, one that I call negative a and one that I call a, I know that they are opposites if they are on opposite sides of 0. One is to the right of 0, one is to the left of 0, one is above 0, one is below 0, and they are the same distance from 0 on the number line. Two important parts of the definition of opposite is the opposite side of 0 and same distance from 0 on the number line. I can explain that the number 0 is its own opposite. I can demonstrate and explain that since all counting numbers are positive, it is not necessary to indicate a positive number, so indicate such, in other words, indicate a positive number with a plus sign. Alright, taking a look at some groups of words here, this would be a great time to pause the video, read through the groups of words, and ask yourself, what is it that they all have in common? What is the relationship between these sets of words? And hopefully you looked at these words and said, well, as I look at these words, I recognize or realize that these are all opposites, is what we've got happening here. So fast and slow are opposites with each other. Light and dark are opposites with each other. Dirty and clean are opposites, alike and different. So what we have here are pairs of opposite numbers. So stop and think for a moment, what are some pairs of opposite words? So stop and think for a moment, what are some opposite words that you know of or that you can come up with? And go ahead and write those down. Maybe you have left and right, cold and hot. All right, in class we would have a walk the number line activity, something that I can't really do as an online video. So with the walk the number line, we would actually examine a number line and we would look for the patterns. So I'm just going to quickly sketch a number line. And our number line in class would be much bigger, but this is what you get when we're trying to do it online. So as you look at the number line, ask yourself, what patterns do you see? What are some observations that you can make? In class, most students would notice that we have a 1 and a negative 1, or a 2 and a negative 2, or a 3 and a negative 3, a 5 and a negative 5. They would notice that they're in some kind of order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that counting order from kindergarten or even before. They would notice that over here on this side of the number line, off to the left here, that has that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 order, but it looks like it's backwards because it has the 5 clear over here on the left, and then it moves this way to get to the 1. So they're actually counting from this direction. This next question, what does 0 represent on the number line? 0 is the starting point. Both of these sets of numbers that we're counting with, going to the right and going to the left, they both start at 0. So 0 is kind of the starting point for these two sets of counting. Or another way of thinking of it is that 0 is the very middle of the number line. Now this last question, what is the relationship between any two opposite numbers and 0 on the number line? So I'm going to erase this and quickly put my number line back up here. So we have 1 and negative 1. that are opposite numbers. Now first I want to make sure we understand why they are opposite numbers. There were two things that it took to be opposite numbers. First, they had to be on opposite sides of 0. So this 1 is on the right-hand side of 0, and this -1 is on the left-hand side of 0. So that's the first thing. They're on opposite sides of 0. The second part is that they have to be the same distance from 0. So if I take a look at this 1, it is 1 unit away from 0. If I look at the -1, it is also 1 unit from 0. So the relationship between any two opposite numbers and 0 on the number line, 0 is in between them, and they are the same distance from 0. Taking us right back to that I can statement. So taking a look at this first example here, we're supposed to locate 8 and its opposite on the number line, and we need to explain how they are related to 0. So we are going to continue to use that definition that we had before. We need numbers that are on opposite sides of 0 and they are the same distance from 0. So the first thing I need to do is locate the 8. So I'm going to start at 0 and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There is 8. Now if I want the opposite of 8, I need to start at 0 and I need to go in the opposite direction. And I need to go the same distance. So starting at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 8, and I counted 8 units to the right, and then I started at 0 again because it's between them, and I went 8 units to the left, and I ended up at -8. So I have located 8 and -8. I have said that they are opposites. So -8 and 8 are opposites. They are opposites because they are on opposite sides of 0. A little spelling error there. So they are on opposite sides of 0 and they are the same distance from 0. I know my handwriting is just atrocious today. So -8 and 8 are opposites. They are opposites because they are on opposite sides of 0. 0 is in between them. And they are the same distance, 8 units. So let's take a look at this exercise 2 here. We are going to locate and label the opposites of the numbers on the number line. So the first thing I'm supposed to do is find 9. So I'm going to start at 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. And if I am going to find its opposite, I need to start at 0 again, and I need to go in the opposite direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I can find its opposite is -9. Now, in my head, I should be saying they are opposites because they're on opposite sides of 0, and they are both the same direction from 0. All right, taking a look at -2 here. So -2, I need to go in the left-hand direction. I need to go to the negatives, and I'm going to go 1, 2, and I'm at -2. Now to find its opposite, I start again at 0, and I am going to go 2 units in the opposite direction. 1, 2. So the opposite of -2 is 2. Looking at C here, looking at 4. I will start at 0. This is a positive 4. Even though it doesn't have a plus sign in front of it, it's still a positive 4. I'm going to go 4 units to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 units in the positive direction. And I'm going to then go back to 0 and go 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4 units in the negative direction. And I land on negative 4. The last one is negative 7. I will start at 0. I'm going to go 7 in the negative direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I end at negative 7. I will start at 0, and I will go 7 in the positive direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And they are opposite numbers because 0 is in between them. They're on opposite sides of 0, and they are the same distance from 0. They're each 7 units from 0. Exercise 3. Write the integer that represents the opposite of each situation. So first we need an integer to represent the situation, and then we need to think about what would be the opposite of the situation. And we need to explain what does 0 mean in each of these situations. So I've got 100 feet above sea level, so the integer is a positive 100 that I can write without the plus sign. I don't have to have that plus in front of positive numbers. Now, when I think about what 0 means, I need to ask myself, what am I counting from? So in this situation, remember 0 is where we start the counting from. So in this situation, what am I counting from? Well, we are counting from sea level. So 0 in this situation is sea level. 0 is sea level. It is the level of the sea. It's not a positive number. It's not a negative number. It is where the sea is. Looking at this second example, B. 32 degrees below 0. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, goodness. My goodness. I almost messed up on A. I didn't read my directions very well. I'm supposed to have the opposite of each situation. So I had a plus 100. My opposite is going to be a negative 100. I'm going to write that in a different color and circle it. And then I've got 0 as sea level. Okay. Whew. All right. I'm going to go back here to B. 32 below 0. And I'm going to have 32 below 0 is going to be a negative 32. I need to have the opposite integer, which is going to be a positive 32. I'm going to circle that. And then I need to explain what 0 is. 0 is 0 degrees Celsius. Now, in science, we know that 0 degrees Celsius is the freezing temperature of water. And that may be something that you didn't know, but maybe you know it now. But 0 in this situation is 0 degrees Celsius. We're not in the positive temperature Celsius. We're not in the negative temperature Celsius. We're at 0. All right, looking at C here, we are supposed to have a withdrawal of $25, and a withdrawal is taking money out. So that's a negative 25. I'm supposed to write the opposite integer, which would be a positive 25. And again, I don't need to put the plus sign because positive numbers don't have to have those little plus signs. And I need to think about what 0 in this situation is. 0 would be not taking any money out, not withdrawing any money. But not just withdrawing, we also would not be depositing. So 0 in this situation is not taking any money out, and it's also not putting any money back in. Example 2A, real-world example. Maria decides to take a walk along Central Avenue to purchase a book at the bookstore. On her way, she passes the Furry Friends pet shop and goes in to look for a new leash for her dog. Furry Friends Pet Shop is 7 blocks west of the bookstore. She leaves Furry Friends Pet Shop and walks toward the bookstore to look at some books. After she leaves the bookstore, she heads east for 7 blocks and stops at Ray's Pet Shop to see if she can find a new leash at a better price. Which location, if any, is the farthest from Maria while she is at the bookstore? So we need to determine an appropriate scale, so what are we going to count by? And then we need to model the situation on the number line. And we also need to say, what does 0 represent in the situation? So I need to do some careful reading of this problem. So on her way, she's going to go past Furry Friends Pet Shop, and she's going to go in and look for a new leash for her dog. So I have a stop here, stop number 1, Furry Friends Pet Shop. It says that Furry Friends is 7 blocks west of the bookstore. So I have the bookstore, and if I go to the west, which I'm going to call this direction because I'm going to have north, east, south, and west. So I have the bookstore. If I go 7 blocks west, I'm at Furry Friends. 7 blocks. Okay. She leaves Furry Friends Pet Shop and she walks toward the bookstore to look at some books. So she leaves the pet store, goes to the bookstore to look at books. After she leaves the bookstore, she heads east for 7 blocks and stops at Ray's Pet Shop. So she's going to go east to Ray's Pet Shop, and the total distance she's traveling is 7 more blocks. And she's still looking for a leash for a better price. So which location, if any, is the farthest from Maria while she is at the bookstore? Well, it looks to me like everything is being counted from the bookstore. We're counting Furry Friends is 7 blocks west, and we've got Ray's, which is 7 blocks east. So the bookstore is kind of our central point here. Oh, what does 0 represent? Well, we're counting everything from the bookstore. 0 is the bookstore, because everything is counted from the bookstore. And I'm going to use the word measured from the bookstore. So 0 is the bookstore because everything is measured from the bookstore. And I go 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is Ray's. And I go 7 the other direction, west, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I've got Furry Friends. I've got the bookstore in the middle. So which location is the farthest from Maria while she's at the bookstore? Well, they're both the same distance from her, so neither of them is farthest away. Matter of fact, they're just the same distance in opposite directions, opposite numbers. Exercise 4. On a number line, locate and label a credit of $15 and a debit for the same amount from a bank account. What does 0 represent in this situation? So I need a credit of 15 and I need a debit of 15. So I'm going to have a 0 and I need to go in the credit direction, which is positive 5, 10, and 15. And I need to go in the opposite direction, the same amount. Negative 5, negative 10, negative 15. So I have my credit of 15 here. I've got my debit of 15 here. This is a debit. This is a credit. And now I need to say, what is 0? 0 is a credit or debit of $0. Or 0 is no credit or debit. We're not doing anything. No change to the bank account. Nothing happening is 0. I didn't put any money in, didn't take any money out. Exercise 5. On a number line, locate and label 20 degrees below 0 and 20 degrees above 0. 20 degrees Celsius below 0 and 20 degrees Celsius above 0. And what does 0 represent in this situation? Well, I'm going to put a 0, and I need to have 20 and negative 20, 10 and 20, and negative 10 and negative 20. I have 20 above, and I have 20 below, which is negative 20 degrees Celsius. And 0 in this situation is that we are not above 0 and we are not below 0. So what does 0 represent in this situation? Now, thinking back just a little bit, not too long ago, I told you what happens at 0 degrees Celsius. So 0 is 0 degrees Celsius, but we can also say it is the freezing temperature of water. But we'll keep it short here. 0 is 0 degrees Celsius. We aren't in the negatives, we aren't in the positives. We're at 0. All right, looking at exercise 6, a proton represents a positive charge, and we need to write an integer to represent 5 protons. So if I have a positive charge, it's a positive number, a positive 5. Electrons represent a negative charge. Write an integer to represent 3 electrons, which is a negative 3. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, are these opposite numbers, since that's what we've been working on in this lesson? And hopefully you can say that yes, one of them is positive and one of them is negative, but these aren't opposite numbers. Can you think of an explanation for why they are not opposite numbers, even though one of them is positive and one of them is negative? Well, one of them is 5 units from 0. The other one is only 3 units from 0. So even though they're on opposite sides of 0, they are not the same distance from 0. This means that they are not opposite numbers, even though they have opposite signs. So looking at the closing, what is the relationship between any number and its opposite when plotted on a number line? What makes numbers opposite? A non-zero number and its opposite are both the same distance from 0. I think we've hit that pretty hard in this lesson. Same distance from 0. And they are also the opposite sides of 0. So 2 things to make an opposite number. Same distance from 0, opposite sides of 0. Now, how could you use this relationship to locate the opposite of a given number on the number line? Well, I could use the given number to find the distance from 0 on the opposite side. So I know if I've got a positive 5, that I am 5 from 0 in the positive direction, which would mean that I would want to go 5 from 0 in the negative direction to find the to find the opposite number. So will this process work when finding the opposite of 0? Pause and think about that for a moment. And the answer is no, because 0 is its own opposite. On a number line, 0 is no distance from 0, which means 0 is its own opposite. There is no positive 0, there is no negative 0, there is just 0, because everything counts from here. That's one of the really cool and powerful things about 0. It isn't positive, it isn't negative, it is just 0. All right, quick look at the I can statements for the lesson. Hopefully you're feeling pretty confident that you can demonstrate and explain that each non-zero integer a has an opposite that would be written as negative a. So if I have a whole number a, I have an opposite negative a, and I can say the opposite is true. If I have a negative a, that means there is a positive a. Hopefully you can demonstrate and explain that negative a and a are opposites if they're on opposite sides of 0, and they are the same distance from 0. Two big qualifications there. Hopefully you can explain that 0 is its own opposite. There's no positive 0, there's no negative 0, there is just 0. And hopefully you're feeling comfortable with the counting numbers. If it's positive, you don't have to have a plus sign in front of it. If we're doing our counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we know that those are positive numbers. That's something that we agree to as mathematicians. So that concludes Module 3, Lesson 4. Make sure you complete your exit ticket, and if you need help, make sure you reach out to your teacher.